Have you ever tried to script a cold open for a comedy news show the week the Louvre was robbed? Brainworm Bobby Jr. tried to use his friendships with O.J. Simpson and Bill Cosby to excuse his close friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The Marine Corps accidentally detonated a shell over a California highway for their 250th birthday. 13 U.S. government orgs joined Blue Sky to try and troll lefties, failing to do so when they were instantly added to the top 20 most blocked accounts on the platform. The Homeland Security X account was trolled by shit goblin Will Stancil and the occasional store brand Misa Amane / Mecha Hitler Grok. And millions of USians marched in response to authoritarians pointing guns at immigrants and dudes in chicken suits. It's almost harder being spoiled for choice, y'all. Woof. And welcome to Muttday Morning News. I'm the titular Mutt Fen. Now let's get to some news. TwitchCon was this past weekend, and while the Amazon-owned company and the convention in specific have a long history of misogynistic abuses, this weekend was, sadly, more of the same. On October 17th, a video went viral on X and Blue Sky showing a man bypassing a meet and greet line and assaulting Emiru, the 32nd most watched streamer on the entire platform, before a single guard drove the man off. Instead of making some kind of public statement on the incident explaining where the security Twitch had promised in their October 8th blog post what we're doing to keep you safe at TwitchCon were, or anything you'd expect from a company owned by a billionaire who can buy and destroy a newspaper as a wedding gift for his new wife, Twitch instead sent a response that turned out to be half puppy piss to Zach Bussey, an independent reporter who focuses on streaming spaces. In it, they claimed, "We immediately removed this individual from TwitchCon premises, and they were banned indefinitely from Twitch, both online and in-person events." Twitch CEO Dan Clancy also gave an interview to Taylor Lorenz, recorded sometime after the incident, but notably before Emiru's own statement. You'll see why that's notable when we get to it. While the full piece won't be live until Wednesday, Lorenz did release a clip where Clancy claims, "The safety of our creators is a top priority," and further went on to say, "We're looking very closely at everything that happened here, and I care deeply about Emmy. She's a friend of mine." Side note, good on Lorenz for actually wearing a mask. Emiru's statement rather glaringly contradicts Clancy's claims about creator safety prioritization. In it, she explained that the man crossed at least one other creator's meet and greet space to reach her, while 3 or 4 con security staff in the area did nothing. She also explained the security who drove the assaulter off was her personal bodyguard, though not her usual, as he's banned from Twitch events after an incident at the 2023 TwitchCon where a stalker tried to assault her then too, and her favorite guard held the man until police came to collect him. Likely why this guard only pushed the man away before returning to Emiru's side. She further clarified that the man being immediately detained was a blatant lie. In the clip, he was allowed to walk away, and Emiru says he was only caught hours later after her manager, the woman comforting her in the clip, pressured staff to do literally anything about the incident. As for the bit about Clancy considering Emmy a friend, well, considering according to her statement, Twitch and TwitchCon staff still hadn't checked in with her by the 18th, and the friend who was there comforting her allegedly caught TwitchCon security joking and laughing about the incident behind the booth, I'd say that friendship is at best one-sided, at worst the same parasociality Clancy tried to condemn in the Lorenz interview. Want to guess who else was at TwitchCon? If you said Gavin Trump 3.0 Newsom, you're right. The Charlie Kirk fanboy, transphobe, and tormentor of the homeless was hanging out in the premium partner lounge, available only to select streamers based on their average viewership. He was holding meetings with said streamers on how to reach young voters, since Kick hasn't quite recovered from that whole "a guy was tortured to death on stream to host a convention Newsom would feel more at home at." Reportedly, many streamers refused to meet with the governor, not for any particularly scrupulous reason, but rather because he wouldn't let them stream the one-on-ones. In case you've forgotten TwitchCon's long history of issues, let me do a real quick speed run of the highlights. Every year has had at least one woman, though often more, report spiked drinks. In 2017, Dr. Disrespect, aka Herschel Guy Beam IV, yes, that is his real name, famously cheated on his wife at TwitchCon. Also famously the same year, he was self-admittedly sexting with a minor using Twitch's Whispers functionality, which they quietly brought back recently. In 2022, both Felix XQC and Amaranth reported being harassed and assaulted, the latter by 3 or 4 different stalkers. In 2024, a Kick streamer, Big Loaf, hit on a 12-year-old girl before asking her to go to a club with him. The EU TwitchCon this year had multiple instances of harassment, allegedly allegedly by the staff themselves, soft confirmed by Twitch when they fired many of them. And let's not forget the foam pit from 2022 TwitchCon, which was so wildly unsafe, Adriana Chechik broke her back in 2 places and was forced to abort a pregnancy after jumping into it. Congratulations on your 10th year, TwitchCon. You continue to be just as dangerous as ever. So because of that whole special edition of Muttday I did on Friday, I kind of have some free time to talk about weird news, but I really wasn't expecting to use this space to say positive things about Kim Kardashian. Her shapewear company, Skims, released its second, I'm gonna say faux controversial product before immediately selling out. Dubbed the Ultimate Bush, they're Markins for the modern era, and the fact that we have a word for that kind of implies it's a product with a market. I'll be honest, when I first heard about this, I kind of expected to make fun of it, but looking at the product, they actually seem well thought out. They have 3 fabric colors to kind of match skin tones and 4 pube color texture combos for each of those. And while I'm not a fan of having a bush myself, thank you laser, I know plenty of girls who are, and clearly they're a marketable demographic. This story also reminded me of Skims' other faux controversial piece, the bra with nipples. While I don't care to support any of her economic endeavors, especially since the sale of Skims bras this past week donated 10% of their sales to the Susan G. Komen Foundation, a nonprofit that exists to enrich its executives by spreading awareness of breast cancer while doing as little as possible to actually combat it, I will stand in favor of the cultural work she's doing to empower women in our sexualities. I just wish she'd stop doing it while she and her family pay into the same forces repressing women's liberty and bodily autonomy. I also mentioned having an upcoming Magic the Gathering story during that special edition, and I'll bet those of you who play cringed a little bit when you heard that. For the rest of you, Magic players are having a rough time of it. For the last several years, MTG has been doing these Universes Beyond cards, or whole sets, with characters and settings from existing IPs rather than WotC's multiverse. Opinion on them has been mixed, to say the least, but this year UB sets were introduced into Standard, the format playing the most recent 2 or so years of released cards, announced apparently before Wizards had nailed down the licensing deals. On September 26th, the set Marvel's Spider-Man was released, but only in paper. See, while the other UB Standard sets this year, Final Fantasy and Avatar: The Last Airbender, will have digital releases, Marvel's Spider-Man and presumably the 2026 set Marvel Superheroes are seeing digital release as Through the Omen Paths, essentially the same set, but where every card has a new name and art. And apparently, that's all, as the Omen Path set released on Arena on September 23rd didn't have a unified setting or theme, feeling more like the old core sets, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Folks love some of those core sets, usually because they had a unified theme and vision, while these cards didn't even get flavor text. As the Fortnitification of pop culture continues unabated, much to the chagrin of Magic players facing down the reality that New York City will soon have more Magic sets dedicated to it than many of WotC's own planes, Wizards thought it was in their best interest to include this line in their player feedback survey. To what degree did negative influencer commentary impact your perceptions of Magic the Gathering / Marvel Spider-Man before the set released? Creators are, rightly, feeling insulted by the question's implication they were supposed to provide free marketing for the set rather than their actual opinions, as at least one member of Wizards staff took to Blue Sky to noticeably not apologize for the implication. As someone who's been out of Magic content creation, dang it, still not as long as I was in. Fun fact, before my transition, I was, for a while, the youngest podcaster on MTGcast, and one of the 3 or so idiots in charge of pushing podcasts live, assuming they formatted their stuff right. Magic has always been at odds with the creators that support it. Kennel me, they sent the damn Pinkertons after someone 2 years ago. I suspect many of you have heard this quote from one Mr. Fred Rogers. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping." It's a moving quote, but one many take the wrong lesson from. Remember that Mr. Rogers nor his mother were not saying that for your benefit, but to help powerless children feel hope. It's our responsibility as adults to become the helpers. As ICE continues to terrorize the US and regularly kill family dogs, Candace Nelson, a professional dog walker for the last 3 years in Chicago, having also done this job, no, it's not as easy as you likely assume, took to social media and offered free walks to anyone who didn't feel safe going outside. Lest you think that bit about ICE killing dogs was a joke, or that animal cruelty is somehow a step too far for our homegrown secret police, even the meme account We Rate Dogs previously obviously most well known for silly scoring system or changing dog names to sound more white, depending on how much attention you have to burn on such things, has taken to sharing the harm police and feds have been doing to man's best friend. In an article by Forbes back in August, it was reported Los Angeles County Animal Care began tracking deportation-related voluntary surrenders, so not counting those brought in by others, in June, and already had seen 25 dogs and 6 cats. A Denver-based nonprofit, We Matter to Pet Rescue, rehomed or set up with fosters 85 pets for similar reasons since the Trump administration began in January. I've linked the Forbes article in the description. I'm gonna break up the big feels for a second with something a little more lighthearted. My favorite signs from last week's No Kings Marches. Okay, actually, this first one is less an individual sign and more, damn do I love Denver, and boy do I hope unicorns become our inflatable du jour. I do find it hard to beat just using a street sign. Though a very likely literal bush pilot dressing up as Hayao Miyazaki's most self-insert character, whose most well-known line is "better a pig than a fascist," tops that hands down. This one about young Democrat chats was just remarkably timely. No, I'm not doing a story on the young Republicans Nazi group chat, save that I suppose for a bit right now, because despite what JD Vance said, no, none of those Nazis were kids, and many were over 30, which is actually still pretty young for the average young Republican group. I just like the phrase hell in a handbasket, okay? Plus, the handbasket is a really good news source by Marissa Kabas. I also just like simple, funny signs, too. And really, really absurd ones. Okay, these two aren't so much signs as they are cops openly admitting they cause march and protest-related violence and can just as easily choose not to do so. Suffice it to say, the Illinois State Police, who spent the weekend particularly violently beating Broadview protesters about the faces and heads with clubs the night of the No Kings marches once the grandparents had headed home, did not release any such statement. Returning to the weird authoritarian crap about helpers, I didn't have time to cover this previously. On October 2nd, Apple, reportedly at the behest of the Trump administration, pulled the Ice Block app from their store. The app enabled users to share locations where they'd seen the roving masked kidnapping squads. The defense, of course, being that knowing where ICE are beating and kidnapping people makes the masked marauders feel unsafe. Damn, can I use that defense to magically make creepy dudes stop commenting on my body? Because that makes me feel unsafe, and I'm in way more danger than masked thugs with guns. Though, to be clear, if you're a dude capable of making not creepy comments about my body, those are fine. It just won't go anywhere unless you take the estrogen, if you know what I mean. Of course, that excuse didn't work so well when Apple banned the Eyes Up app on the 8th. That app merely archived footage of the Fed's actions. I know I have to say this like every time I cover US fascism, but y'all really don't get that hiding your own past actions simply communicates that you know they were wrong. With both apps down and many marginalized folks not fully trusting them to begin with, so-called ICE watchers or ICE whistlers have been springing up all over the country. Essentially neighborhood watch groups coordinating to warn and defend their communities and neighbors. What I'm trying to tell you in these last 3 stories is that there are helpers. There are ways people are fighting back. You can look at them for momentary hope, but you can choose to use that little ray of hope as kindling for more. Not just for you, but for others as well. You can join the helpers. Even if you don't think there's anything you can do, I promise there is. Sometimes you just have to ask someone else what you can do. You know how I try to inspire a little bit of that hope? By telling y'all about how blisteringly stupid this regime is, especially when no one but themselves directly suffers for it. Saturday the 18th was picked as the day to celebrate the US Marine Corps' 250th birthday, and like any group of folks who feel safe in their masculinity, the Trump administration and the Marine Corps decided to celebrate it by firing the largest guns they could find. The Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who continues to demand to be called the Secretary of War, and the dictatorial understudy with the charisma of a well-humped couch, JD Vance, arrived at Camp Pendleton on the big day after suddenly demanding an artillery drill replace blanks with high-explosive live rounds the previous day. Oh, and they demanded the live explosive rounds be fired over the 5 freeway, the primary thoroughfare between LA and San Diego, without closing the freeway. Even Gavin Trump 3.0 Newsom was a bit wary of the US Marine Corps firing a planned 60 explosive shells over a busy freeway and ordered it closed, to the reported consternation of Vance and Hegseth. It turned out to be a wise, if unnecessary, move when the M777 howitzers were silent after only their first volley. Reporters on the scene were told the planned 60 volleys had been scaled down. For some reason, that decision was only communicated after one of the 155mm rounds from the first volley reportedly detonated prematurely, raining shrapnel and fragments on a California Highway Patrol car and motorcycle that were part of Couchboy's motorcade and waiting near the 5 freeway, just in case you're wondering, because of that whole Free Press issue where Hegseth confiscated the badges of the entire Pentagon Press Association last week. Well, the New York Times article on the detonation alone had comments by 6 different Marines, 3 under conditions of anonymity as they fear reprisal. Yup, they're already the leakiest faucet in the regime's rapidly flooding house. This one, I guess, comes with a trigger warning. I need to talk about a species of bloat flies, specifically the New World screwworm fly. So, quick explanation. Bloat flies lay their eggs which hatch into maggots in dead tissue. New World screwworm flies specifically lay their eggs in living tissue, mostly small open cuts and the like, which the maggots then eat at, increasing infection risk and potentially attracting yet more flies. They're a tropical pest and used to be a seasonal issue in several southern states until they were declared eradicated in North America by the 2000s, as a result of a federal program going back to the 50s. However, late last year, a case of screwworm popped up in Mexico again, and with the second case 2 weeks ago, Texas ranchers want to make sure they're prepared. That's all background you need before I explain the mildly absurd, while quite funny, way we've been combating them since the 50s, as well as the barking stupid grift the Texas Agricultural Commissioner is failing to pull to line his own pockets. Actually, how do you think one would combat parasitic flies? I sort of assumed it would be with traps or pesticides. Not that I'd like the latter near animals, but it's the USDA we're talking about here. Turns out the answer is yes to traps, but they're playing supporting role to... Actually, it'll be funnier if I tell you after you hear what Sid Miller, the Texas Agricultural Commissioner in question, is shilling first. Miller is trying to push some kind of fly bait. In an interview with RFD TV, Miller said, "I still haven't gotten a buy-in from the USDA to do a fly bait. If we put out fly bait, we can wipe out the screwworm in Mexico in 90 days, but for some reason, they're very reluctant to do that." The USDA has already told him why, actually, 2 reasons. First, because they tried his traps and declared them ineffective. In fact, while speaking with the Texas Tribune, a USDA spokesperson said, in 1 month, USDA traps in Panama caught thousands of New World screwworm flies. Commissioner Miller's traps caught 1 single NWS fly. They went on to add, when presented with the results of his traps underperforming, Commissioner Miller indicated USDA staff should paint them black, to which the USDA declined. Miller was also reportedly told another reason. As he put it in a ridiculously softballed interview with the Texas Standard, Miller said he was told, quote, "They're environmentally unsound. I keep asking why, and they say, well, it would probably kill the good flies too. My answer is good flies. I mean, what's a good fly? That's kind of like a good fire ant, which, yeah, that does sound kind of odd to me, but then I'm not even a cattle dog, much less the agricultural commissioner of a state with a $15 billion cattle industry who claims to know how the screwworm was combated before, namely the sterile insect technique. Between 1962 and 1975, the US and Mexico had fly factories that bred 94 billion sterile New World screwworm flies, which were then airdropped all over Mexico. Sadly, the US factories were shuttered in the 70s when the fly was largely considered eradicated from the US, but not Mexico. In Panama, where the pest is still fairly active, they have a factory that can breed up to 117 million sterile flies in a single week. But the USDA wants to top that, hoping for 400 million a week by 2026 from a new fly factory in Texas and converting an existing sterile fruit fly factory in southern Mexico. Well, this is a first. I had to add this story while editing. Today, October 20th, 20 days into a government shutdown while the GOP control the House, Senate, presidency, and the Supreme Court, the Trump administration began renovating the White House by taking a backhoe to the East Wing. Despite Trump's previous claims that the project to add an entirely unnecessary 90,000 square foot ballroom, just a few square feet shy of 2 football fields onto the White House would begin in September, that it would cost $200 million, and that the renovations, quote, won't interfere with the current building. It won't be. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite. It's my favorite place. I love it. Yes, that is a real quote. He took a fupping backhoe to the building. You can see it right there. The price has also increased to $250 million, though Trump has previously claimed he could have had it done for only $100 million. As an anarcho-commie trans girl, no, I don't really care about the White House. But as a reporter, and one aware of the import many of my fellow countryfolk place on the building, this is vile and stupid, and why in the hell am I having to even record this? Hey, this was nearly a short one. I mean, at least it didn't crack 4K words, and I'd like to think it would have been difficult since I did a show like 2.5 days ago, but this is me we're talking about. Heck, I didn't even get to how the international community is sort of finally half acknowledging that Israel broke the ceasefire treaty, 2 weeks after they never actually stopped firing on Palestinians and kept illegally and in contravention of the terms they'd agreed to, blocking humanitarian aid. Oh, and torturing the humanitarian flotilla members they'd illegally kidnapped. Schedule for this week, because I did that already. There's only one movie this week because we are watching Casablanca, and yes, I have it down as a propaganda piece because if you are not aware, yes, Casablanca was originally actually made as a propaganda piece that just happened to be one of the most well-loved romances of all time. So yeah, we'll be watching that at 6 p.m. No stream tomorrow. I'm gonna be finally starting Pokemon Legends ZA on Wednesday. I'm basically doing noon for almost every stream this week for an assortment of different reasons. And I'm not kidding. If anyone brings up the stupid, well, you can do cross-dressing to get the girl rival, I will ban you because no. One, that's shit. You should just be able to pick the gender of your rival because that should just be a thing. And two, no, I don't want to experience getting dead named and he-himmed through an entire fucking game just so I can not have to deal with a shitty dude as a rival instead of a moderately attractive woman. I haven't actually seen her, but yes, I would much prefer to have Yuri instead of Hetslop, but I was just seeing some comment by, I think, Beth, one of the two writers of Ranked Competitive Breast Growth, about, yeah, it's great that the cis fucking love the most basic trans-inclusive crap, but only when it's at the expense of trans people trans women being uncomfortable with it because it's going right back to he-himming us. Yay. Especially since couldn't you pick they in a recent Pokemon game? Oh well. I'll be doing Digimon Time Stranger on the 23rd at noon. PvE Tarkov is going to be on Friday at 4 p.m. because Jules and I got invited to a thing at the normal time on Saturday, which is why Saturday will be one of the two monster games, I don't know which one, at noon. It'll depend on which one I'm feeling, so yeah. Stream, thank you all so very much. As a reminder, this was brought to you by April, Fragile Paper, Manfred, Pinball Witch, Pimento, and Yalk over on patreon.com/Fen and coffee.com/Fen. Fen.gay is up and running again. I was actually kind of expecting it to be broken longer than it was, but hey, it's working. I had to do a web hosting transfer things. Although my Blue Sky account is still a little borked, I have to figure out what happened there. I know what happened there, but I need to figure out how to fix it. Just because I own the fen.gay URL, so it's what I use as my handle on Blue Sky too, and there's just shenanigans behind that, and apparently one of the cogs broke a little bit, so I have to go fix it. Yeah, if you're watching this on the edited version on YouTube, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all those things that make the algorithm not hate me. And like I said on the special edition, full disclosure, I survive off of basically about $100 a month between my Patreon and Twitch subs. So any support legitimately helps a ton. As little as $1 is kind of life-changing. Yeah, I will see you all again soon. I've already shown the schedule for this coming week. Casablanca tonight. I want to get more written work, but that will mean having to cut down a stream during the week at some point, so we'll see, because I now that the site's working again and actually has a functional search tool, I want to do more fiction and like essays and things, so we'll see. Yeah, Thank you all. I will see you again hopefully very soon. I don't know if there's anyone live, because the last time oh no, there are a bunch of people live. What playing? Let's see what that was. And there's an ad playing, so I can't see what the game is. Damn it! I really hate the way Twitch works now. Broken Sword, Shadow of the Templar Reforged. I don't necessarily know what that is, but you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna throw you all over to Iggy Maid. I want to double check pronouns because I think it's just, I don't know. Think she, her, but, VTuber who does, who's a iguana. Yeah, iguana maid. So have fun. It looks like it's some sort of, I don't even know. Either way, I hope you all have fun. I'm trying to parse what the game is because it looks vaguely familiar to me.